And let's talk about what is going to be a D-Day for the BCCI as the Supreme Court will pronounce its verdict in the case concerning the implementation of the Lodha Committee recommendations. The hearings on the case concluded on the 30th of last month and the orders were reserved. The Supreme Court appointed Lodha panel suggested sweeping reforms to make the cricket board more accountable and more transparent in its working. Now, these reforms included banning of government servants and ministers from being a part of cricket administration, having a nominee of the CAG in the governing council, an age cap of 70 years for cricket administrators, and the recommendation of one state, one vote. These were many of the recommendations. This also included the presence of 2 members from IPL franchises on the league's governing council, reduction of advertisements during matches. However, the BCCI has argued against the feasibility of some of these proposals put forward. This will be the final hearing in the matter, and the Lodha panel recommendations are likely to bring about a major overhaul in cricket administration altogether. We've got Anusha live with us on this particular story. First, Anusha, tell us by what time are we expecting the Supreme Court to finally come out with its verdict?
Well, at 2 p.m. today, the Chief Justice Court, T.S. Thakur, will pronounce this crucial order as far as these, application of BCCI against the Lodha panel recommendation is concerned. And that's when we'll expect this will be the final word of the top court as far as any application of BCCI is concerned against the Lodha panel recommendation. It is worth watching whether any of these contentious pleas that they have raised before the Apex Court is sent back to the Lodha panel for reconsideration.
All right, Borya Majumdar is also with us on the phone line now. Borya, what explains the stiff resistance that has been put up to recommendations made by the Lodha panel, especially from within the BCCI, when overall all that the panel wants to do is to make sure that the BCCI is more transparent in its functioning?
No, but there are serious problems with that. Take the advertisement clause, for example. I mean, that doesn't make the BCCI transparent. That ruins the game. I mean, if there is advertisement money that is, it collapses by 80%, then Indian cricket is in peril. BCCI will not be the same organization. Players will not be the same. IPL will collapse. The whole edifice of Indian cricket stands to change, or collapse rather. So it is a seriously contentious clause. And Anusha is right. I mean, I expect the Supreme Court to see that and send some recommendations back to the Lodha panel. But most of the other recommendations are valid and good and transformatory and will make the BCCI more accountable. Look, Padmaja, all said and done, Indian cricket will fundamentally change post 2 p.m. today. Whether it's, sort of sounding the death knell for the BCCI, or will it be a reconciliatory order where they will have some breathing space? We've got to wait and see. But, for example, the age and tenure, the cooling off period, the politicians, all of these factors will mean that the face of Indian cricket, the administrative face of Indian cricket, will change forever.
Absolutely, and as far as cricket administration is concerned, it seems that the determination to hold on to it by politicians cuts across political affiliations, cuts across political lines, which is why the resistance on that particular recommendation as well. And this is something that has plagued Indian cricket. A lot of old-timers, a lot of veterans of the sport have spoken out about how professionals should be in administration and not politicians. Borya?
Politicians per se cannot be classified as bad, because then we will classify one particular profession. It depends on how efficient are you, and is there an age and tenure clause, and how long are you there. For example, you cannot be there for more than 8, 10, 20 years. So that 70-year clause and the 9-year cumulative tenure clause, I think, will be made applicable. If that is made applicable, Mr. Pawar, Mr. Srinivasan, Mr. Bindra, Mr. Mohinder Pandav, Ganga Raju, I mean, I can name one after the other, Mr. Farooq Abdullah, all these people, their careers in BCCI will come to an end. So in one whiff, you are actually talking about 15 state associations losing their bosses. And if it is made applicable to the state associations also, then imagine what will happen in terms of a churn in cricket administration. As I said, it is D-Day. Fundamentally, the governance of Indian cricket stands to change at 2 p.m.
Absolutely. You stay with me, Borya, and right here in India Today, we are going to continue our coverage with exactly what happens on the Lodha panel recommendations, what the Supreme Court says. But Anusha, also for the benefit of our viewers, tell us how the Supreme Court, in fact, has taken a very stern line vis-a-vis the BCCI and the Lodha panel recommendations, how its objections, how the board's objections were not received very kindly by the Supreme Court most of the times.
Absolutely, Padmaja, and let me begin with what Boria was just pointing out about, the involvement of politicians. The Supreme Court very categorically made a distinction between the politicians and, ministers and the people who are holding official public offices. So the Supreme Court has made it very clear that it does not understand why BCCI actually wants to go ahead and have ministers and politicians, not just politicians, people holding public offices as its office bearers. Another very crucial point is about how the funds are allocated to the state associations. The Supreme Court in fact asked the BCCI to furnish the account of the last 5 years as to how much funds have been given to different states, what were the reasons and what were the rationale on the basis of which these funds were given to these state associations. So these are the two very crucial points that the Supreme Court has raised, that political inclinations and political motivations cannot continue to guide BCCI, which has been declared as a public body by the top court.
All right, Anusha and Boria, for now, thank you very much for joining us. Remember, 2 p.m. is the critical time. At 1:30 onwards, you're going to hear the very latest in the build-up to that, what is going to be a landmark verdict coming from the Supreme Court on the Lodha panel recommendations. For now, thanks.